Hey y'all, welcome back to the Powerlifting Podcast. I'm your host, Solana Lewis. Today I have a friend on, Dan Flores. And Dan, he's an incredible person, which you'll learn today. He's a transformational life and fitness coach, a dynamic speaker, founder of the Warrior Lifestyle, which is a movement built on forging unbreakable discipline, confidence, and self-mastery. He has his degree in construction management and spent over a decade building structures, but then he learned that his true passion was in building people. And he has a very diverse background that includes marathon running, solar sales, and high impact collaborations. He lists his principles of the Warrior Lifestyle Blueprint. His message is super clear. True success lies in mastering your body, mind, and habits. Through his podcasts, speaking engagements, and coaching programs, he inspires people to embrace growth, break limits, and live life with purpose. Dan, I met him through speaker school, which you'll learn throughout today's episode. And I've seen him speak on stages, and he is incredible. He's super motivating due to how he is so disciplined. He shows up to life in a way that I've never really seen before. So I think you guys will get a lot out of this episode. If it's not your first time listening, please make sure you leave a 5-star rating and review, especially if you've been here before. That means that you liked us enough to come back. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's episode. All right, y'all. Welcome back to the Power and Lifting. I have a special guest today. So, for people who've been longtime listeners, y'all know that I hardly ever have males on the podcast. Okay. This is the fifth male I've ever had of 161 episodes on the podcast. That means he must be special. But, guys, I want to introduce you to my friend Dan. Dan and I have met through public speaking, through speaker school. And so I first met you just seeing you speak, and I was like, yo, this dude's serious. Like he's like I like how you're serious and stern, but also I can tell that like you live a lifestyle that I can live up to because you seem very just disciplined, but in a different way. Cause I'm used to a discipline that is like I have to be disciplined. I have dates coming up, but you're disciplined because you're just a disciplined human being, and not because you're like a competing powerlifter in the sport of powerlifting. So without further ado, y'all, this is Dan. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here.
Yay! I'm excited too. Okay, so let me tell people what speaker school is because they're like, wait, you met through speaker school. So, for people who have seen my Instagram, I've been doing a little bit of public speaking. We have a friend named Brandon Doris, and he leads speaker school where we learn how to put together keynotes and then we get the opportunity to actually speak and deliver keynotes. How did you meet Brandon?
Yeah, I actually met Brandon about 2.5 years ago. We met at a networking event. It just so happens that we were the two people going to the same event. And it's funny because when I was originally thinking about going, I was actually leaning more towards a no. There was like an 80% chance that I wasn't going to go to this event. And I love telling this story. So I was going back and forth with the salesperson. He was trying to sell me tickets, and at the time I was working in construction. I didn't know if I could get the days off, etc. And then my boss, who I was really close to, he's like, you know what, dude, it's just one weekend. Like the company's not going to suffer because you weren't here for one weekend. Just go, just do your thing. So called the salesman back, bought my ticket, booked my flight, and reserved my hotel all before I told the company that I was leaving. So,
Oh my God.
uh, yeah. So flew out to Florida. Networked with a lot of people there. Later that night on day one, a bunch of us we went out to a restaurant to continue networking. Now I arrived a little late, and the main table was full. So I kind of had to sit like on the side there. There was another side table. I was the only one there at the moment. And then it just so happens Brandon came in like a minute or two after me, and so he sat with me. We introduced each other, and I kind of feel like, first of all, remember what I just said. There was an 80% chance that I wasn't going. Now, on top of that, what are the chances that the two of us arrived late and we're kind of forced to sit together on the side? So it kind of feels like we were brought together. It kind of feels like it's fate that we were destined to like just kind of like sit just one on one and getting to know each other. Just so happens that he's from Connecticut, just like me. So we kept in touch, and after that, it's just there was no looking back.
Oh, okay. Do you believe in God? Because I'm like, that's some divine intervention right there.
Yeah, I do believe in fate. I do believe that certain things are supposed to happen, and I love telling the story because I met a lot of you guys through Brandon. Before I met him, I didn't really have a community like this, especially in Connecticut. But because I met him, I met so many other people, and had just had so many opportunities, and that's just like a small token of something much bigger, right? Because we're all going to bigger places in the future.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And same here. Like being a part of the speaker school, because I started January. This was my fourth speaker school we just did 2 weeks ago. I can't believe I've done so many speaker schools, but
Yeah, yeah.
so many connections. So before I went to dive into the warrior lifestyle, you told me that before that you were a construction worker for like a decade, right?
About 12 years, yeah.
12 years. So what made you switch from that to public speaking and teaching people, basically being, would you say you're a life coach or a trainer? I feel like you're a life coach. Don't you do nutrition and training and mental?
Yeah, I'm more of a life coach, yeah, just because it's not just fitness, it's not just eating right, it's like the whole deal, like the whole lifestyle.
Got you. So yeah, what made you switch
Yeah.
over from construction to this?
Yeah, so I actually went to college for construction. I went for construction management, so I was actually a manager. I wasn't an actual construction worker, but I was still in the field with the guys, and we were still grinding and hustling. And went to college for about 7 years. After that, got my degree, and that's kind of what got my foot through the door. Now, it wasn't long. I would say probably about the second or third year into the industry when I realized it was not for me. I didn't like it, but I kind of forced myself to like it because I went to school for 7 years, had a big loan, paid off big debts, and I at least want to give it a shot. I tried so hard to want to stay there, but the more I did it, the more I wanted to back off from it. And the pivotal point that happened was when I was 30. My brother got me my first entrepreneurial book, which was The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. That's kind of like the thing that sparked something inside of me. That's where the whole change happened. So as soon as I read that book, I'm like, what the hell happened? What did I just read? Because I never grew up in an environment where my teachers talked about success or networking or build your own business, right? I grew up in the ghetto. My environment, people in it never spoke that way. So I didn't figure this out till much later in life, obviously, when I first read that book. And one book led to another book, led to another book. And I kind of call it like the staircase of entrepreneurship, where you start with reading books, then you go to watching YouTube videos or podcasts, and then you go to buying online courses, and then you go to networking events, right? So it's literally like just a staircase, one after the other.
I want to hear more about what was the mindset of people you grew up around as a kid. Because it sounds like they were was it like, just get a job and make some money? Like,
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I was brought up in the same way everyone else was, right? Apply the same rules everyone else did. Graduate from college and find a job that will secure you for the rest of your life. Now, I'm not knocking anyone who wants to pursue that as a career and in their life, but it wasn't the road for me. And I knew that deep down. It's just when I was in construction, I didn't really know what to pivot towards at the time. So I was just kind of stuck. I stayed there trying to make the most out of it. But the more I stayed in construction, the more I wanted to get out of it. And it wasn't until later on where I figured out how to pivot. I started networking. I started to meet certain people. And then that from there kind of just branched off.
so throughout the time of you being a construction worker, wow, were you like, did you have the discipline of waking up early and working out? Was that like a big part of your life? Was nutrition a big part of your life?
Yeah, so nutrition was a newer thing for me. I probably started nutrition about 2 to 3 years ago. It was post-COVID. So pre-COVID, yeah, I mean, I had to get up early anyway because I had to go to work. I tried working out at night, but then I was just dead by that time. Working a 10 to 12 hour shift, you have an hour commute each way. No one wants to go to the gym at that time. And even if I did, I wouldn't really get the most out of it. So I transitioned into working out in the mornings. Now,
Mm.
at first, I wasn't getting up at 3:30. It started at 5. Then it went to 4:30. Then it went to 4. And I just kept getting up earlier and earlier. But it was over a long period of time. This is something that took years for me to develop. It took years for me to master and to get used to.
Okay, I love hearing this because I think one thing when I met you, I was like, this man's been waking up at 3:30 a.m. since he was 10, and he just has this discipline of like someone I've never seen before. But it's nice to hear like it took you a while to get there, to get to like I
Yeah.
can wake up super early. And then I would love to know too, like I know for you, you understand how important habits are. So what is your routine like daily? Like what is happening at 3:30 in the morning when you're awake and I'm sleeping?
Yeah, yeah. So I wake up at 3:30. Some of the things I like to do, first thing I do, I make my bed. I brush my teeth, just do all the simple stuff. But the core part of my morning is I meditate for about 5 to 10 minutes, just kind of release my thoughts, right? Because we're just getting up, so I want to make sure my mind is working and the thoughts are flowing. Because when we go throughout our day, we're constantly busy. We don't actually have a lot of time to sit down and reflect on things, right? So the best time to do that is in the morning when everyone's asleep, there's no distractions, and you just have silence. After I meditate, I'll journal. So now I take my thoughts and I put it on paper. So kind of the same concept, but two different steps. First is the mental, I release my thoughts, then I put everything in here on paper because if you're able to put your thoughts on paper, you bring it into the physical world and it's more likely for these things to happen. Now, obviously, there has to be action in there as well, but I'll journal for about 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes. Sometimes I'll journal about things that happened the day before that I might need to fix. Maybe I didn't show up a certain way. Maybe I lost my temper. Maybe I missed something that I didn't do. So anything that I need to work on today that I need to fix so it doesn't become a problem tomorrow. Another thing I like to think about is my life 10 years from now, my business, running a nice sales team, having a family, living in a nice place, just being able to travel with my family and my clients as well. That's another thing I think about. So meditate, journal. I'll also stretch because before I go to the gym, I like to stretch when I'm home because as soon as I get to the gym, I just want to just start moving, right? So do that, take the dog out real quick before I leave, and then from there I get my gym stuff ready, and then I'm off to the gym. I'd like to be in the gym like around 5, maybe 5:15.
Okay, so
So
there's some key nuggets in here because so I'm be transparent, right? I used to journal and I fell off. However, I did learn working with Brandon how important it is to dream. So when you work with Brandon one on one, the first month is like dreaming up what you want, right? So when you said like you have like what you want in 10 years or what you want in 5 years and you write it down, the power of writing it down and then rereading it and reflecting on your days prior to see if you're moving the needle has been pivotal for even me because I'm like, okay, I can look back and be like, am I actually on track to these goals that I have? Am I actually on track to making this amount of money? If I say in 10 years I want to be a millionaire, I can't be making like $20,000 a year and like not improving,
yeah,
right? So that is really massive that you're saying like the journaling is such a big part.
it is because like I said, when we're going through our day, we don't often think about these things, or because we're in a rush. Some people might have kids, some people work, double shifts, some people are running businesses, and it's really a shame that we can't sit down and reflect on how our life is going. It's very important to reflect because you want to make sure that you're still on target, right? You want to make sure that you're still hitting your goals throughout the day, and when you wake up, this is why doing it early in the morning is so important because you have no distractions. You're able to think about your ideas, put them on paper, hold yourself accountable, put anything, any task that you have to do, put it on. I use Google Calendar, so I take it with me the whole time. And every day, it's just one thing after the other. It just holds you more accountable.
That and Google Calendar for me has been like my like I need that every day of my life. Like my it's color
Yeah,
coded now. I'm like my life is so in order now. I feel so much better. I used to be so
yeah,
scattered, but like I learned again, writing everything down is pivotal.
yeah, 100%. And
Oh,
sometimes it's not always like sometimes it's not always about my life. Sometimes it could be like a project I'm working on. Like right now, I'm working on a few ebooks. So sometimes it'll be that stuff. Again, things that I wouldn't think about because my mind is rushing throughout the day. So early in the morning, it's like, oh, oh, there's an idea. Oh, maybe I should do a YouTube video. Oh, maybe I should do this. And I'll just start jotting the ideas down. So it doesn't always necessarily have to be reflecting on thoughts on yesterday or tomorrow, but it could be reflecting on projects, right? And then just kind of go from there.
I want to understand how you do meditation. So for me, I started trying again. Don't judge me, okay? I started trying meditation last year. I downloaded an app, and personally, I have ADHD. Like I was diagnosed with it. I take medication for it. But not that early in the morning. I can't take it too early. Okay, so when I tried meditation in the morning, for me it was horrible because my brain was just bouncing around. How did you learn to master meditation? And then what does meditation really mean to you? Because I think a lot of people think meditation is like I sit in quiet and make that noise. And like,
Yeah.
so what is meditation to you?
Yeah, so what it's not is that. So
Uh,
I don't sit there Indian style with my hands like this. So no, I don't. And you know what? Meditation could be different for everyone. So I don't want anyone listening to this to think that they have to do it my way. But this is what I do. Literally, I make a cup of coffee and I sit in my living room. I sit on the couch. I'll sip my coffee. I don't even. Sometimes I don't even close my eyes. I'll just. The way I meditate is like the mental part, the mental form of me journaling, where journaling is more physical. You're writing things down. For me, I think about the same thing. What can I improve on? What are some of the things that I need to work on? How am I performing? Am I living my life at a 10 out of 10? I just start asking myself all these questions. So essentially, I'm like giving myself a self analysis on my performance. Am I doing everything I can to become the man that I want to be? And that to me is how I meditate. Is just releasing my thoughts, asking myself questions. Am I performing at my peak potential? And then after that, I take those ideas and I put it on paper.
I've never heard that way in my life.
Yeah,
When I was trying
yeah,
to meditate, it was very much like try to keep your brain quiet and think about what's physically happening. It was like, do you hear a bird chirping? Like that means you're in the moment. Do you hear
yeah,
the sound of the buzzing light in your room? So I was literally like trying to just like focus on nothing, and I was like, I'm done.
yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying that's not a good. I'm not saying that's not acceptable. That might work for a lot of people. I used to do the same thing, but for me personally, I didn't gain any value from it.
Mm.
Not much really changed. So I kind of changed the way I started doing that. It might work for other people, but doesn't seem like it works for either you or me.
No, I like that. I'm actually happy you're saying this because like this is a realistic form of meditation I could do. Let me try and get back to you and tell you how it
Sounds good. Sounds
works.
good. Sounds good.
Okay, have you been doing sports since you were like a kid? Like, when did the even interest in working out become a thing in your life?
Yeah, so I was never a sports guy in general. The way fitness happened was when I was in high school, when I think I was like a junior or something like that. I would watch the other juniors and seniors we were sometimes we'll be in the weight room and I'll see them like deadlifts and squats and chest press, right? And I'm like, oh man, I want to do that. I want to be strong like these guys, all right? Because they were athletes at the time. So that's kind of how it's like what piqued my interest. So I started training with them a little bit. And then as I got a little bit older, I started to buy like home stuff like dumbbells. And I have like my Bowflex dumbbells where you could change the weight. I bought this like little bench so I could do like incline dumbbell presses, etc. So and then eventually I got a machine. I bought a machine, kind of like a Bowflex type of machine for home.
Mm,
So I started working out a little bit at home, started watching YouTube videos and stuff like that. And then eventually I transitioned from that to the gym, right? So we talked about the that staircase, right? I started at school with the juniors, then I started doing it at home, and now I'm getting gym memberships. And at that point, I started working out with real trainers and real athletes, and they started to teach me how to work out and stuff like that. And I was just hooked. I mean, it was just, I can't explain it. I started working out since I was 17, and I never, there were a few moments where I stopped here and there. It was never consistent like it is now when I was younger, but it was always a part of my life. It would, fitness is probably the one constant in my life, the one thing I never quit.
I love that. I
Yeah,
think for me too, because I did sports my whole life, but I didn't start weight training until I was a freshman in college. So even though I was doing sports since I was like I think 4, like my mom threw me on track and field, and then
gotcha.
I turned 17 and I went to the weight room for the first time. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but this girl online named Katie Hearn looks really fit, and she said I have to lift weights, so I'm gonna start lifting weights. But then I was literally hooked. Like I just started. I was like, I don't know
Yeah,
what I'm doing, but like something about lifting weights and like building some muscle is kind of cool.
yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. It gives you this type of high that you can't really get from a lot of other places, so really cool.
But I know another thing you do is run marathons. Oh, sorry. Another thing you do is run marathons, and that's something I personally don't think I'll ever get into. But how did that start? Because that is the opposite of what we're talking about right now, lifting weights.
Yeah, yeah. Again, when I was in high school, I was big on the weights, but I was never a runner. I wasn't like an athlete. I wasn't like my conditioning sucked. And the way this started was we would have the 1 mile test runs for gym class, right? In high school, you have to do like 1 mile. We have to do it at a certain time. Before the actual test, we would do practice runs. We do this for about a month and a half for 2 months. Every, probably 3 times a week, we would go out to the track and kind of see what our time is and try to get better at it. And every time I ran, I felt nauseous. I felt like throwing up. There were moments where I did throw up. There were moments where I felt like I was going to pass out. I couldn't do 1 mile in one shot. I was always stopping or suffering to some extent. Like I could never do it in one shot. And that's kind of what traumatized me from running. Okay.
Mm,
So after high school, didn't run. I didn't run my entire 20s or early 30s. I didn't start running until beginning of last year. So beginning of last year, part of my resolutions was in order to become that man that I want to become a symbol, to become an example, I have to eliminate my fears. And one of those fears was running. So I'm thinking to myself, man, how am I going to conquer this? I had no idea what to do. And then I had people in my mastermind at that time tell me, dude, why don't you just run a marathon? And I'm like, run a marathon? I can't even run a mile. That's where I left off was a mile. So, but I knew they were right. I knew they were right. So I hopped on Google, searched a few marathons, signed up for one, and clicked the submit button. And from there, my training started. I started at 1 mile. So I started to master that first.
mhm.
And that took a few weeks. Once I did that, went up to 2 miles, went up to 3 miles, etc. And by the time I got to 10 miles, I knew I was ready for this race I signed up, which at the time it was actually a half marathon. It was 13 miles. Ran the 13 miles. It was terrible, but it was a great victory to have at the end. Then what I did was to prove to myself that it wasn't a fluke. I signed up for a second half marathon, banged that out. As soon as I hit two halves, I knew I was finally ready to do a full marathon. So I did my very first full marathon last October. And then after that, I actually just ran a marathon, believe it or not, this month. It was actually a year after my first marathon. I ran my second
What?
one, which was over the weekend. So we did that. A couple of the guys that we know, John Mendes was there, Rob Tracy, a couple of guys that are in our circle ran that with me, and it was good. It was challenging, but it was good to hit goals and to put yourself in that environment where you're constantly challenging yourself. And it's different when you think you can do it, and it's different when you've proved yourself that you can do it.
So two things. One, you told me that the marathon you just ran, like you signed up for kind of last minute, right?
No, that one was no, that one was not last minute. No, I think that was the
Okay.
one from last year. Yeah, the one from last year. This one actually, I actually got invited to that. I wasn't planning on running a marathon this year, but John messaged me. He's like, dude, we're a couple of us are running marathons. Are you in? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And so we all trained together. We had like our own chat group, and we're all putting our stats and training for this thing. And there we are. We're doing it together.
That's what that's what I love. You're saying that you guys have your own chat, right? Because that's what can really help push you. Because I don't know how I would even be consistent with my own training if I didn't see other people like reaching these new feats. So I'm like, okay, I have to get there because I see other people are doing it. So to like be in a group chat, we're like, yeah, I did this today. Like, what are you doing? Like that must be so motivating.
Yeah, it's very important to be in a community, to not do this yourself, right? The thing about a community, though, is you have to find your right tribe. So the
Mm.
people who have the same goals you do, they have the same mission. Maybe you guys do a few events together, like a marathon or whatever it is. But it's very, very important to be in the right community. I'm actually in a few masterminds myself, and it's done wonders for me.
So when it comes to even masterminds, how do you kind of go about finding the right tribe? And I'm asking that because for me, I've had times where I've like tried to look into different kinds of coaching before I met Brandon, all that stuff. and I'll try it out. I'm like, this is not going well. Like, I'm just not vibing with these people. Like, how do you go about finding like your people?
Yeah, so I would say the first thing to do would be networking, right? Because the only way to find out is that you have to meet people. You have to see who resonate with you and who doesn't. I happen to have been lucky enough where the right people were positioned in my life. So I don't have this magical formula for you, unfortunately. Just like how I give you that story about how I met Brandon, that's how I met a few people in my life. I met Dylan, I don't know if you know this or not, but a few months ago, Dylan invited me to speak at his event in Missouri,
Mm,
right? Which was the biggest event I spoke at. That wouldn't have happened if I never met Brandon. My fitness and life coach right now, because I have a coach as well, I met him through Dylan's event. I would never have met him if I never met Dylan, if I never met Brandon, right? So I just happen to just, I don't know, I'm not really affiliated with a lot of masterminds, but the few that I am, people just happen to be at the right place. It was always meeting someone through someone else, and I was just very fortunate to be in that position.
well, overall, I think that's like the power of networking. Because even for me meeting Brandon, I had to so Delaney, you know Delaney, right?
Yep, yep.
Okay, so the audience will know who Delaney is. So Delaney invited me to that Tony Peck event in December where I met Brandon. And I remember before I went, I'd never been to a networking event in my life. I was like, what is like, networking? It just seemed so intimidating. It's like this thing where people get together. And like, Tony Peck has cigars. So I'm like, I'm supposed to smoke a cigar and like make connections to become a millionaire. Like, this is what's supposed to happen. Like, I don't understand what's supposed to happen. But like, I think the main thing is putting yourself in position to receive, like forcing myself to go there and making myself talk to people has led to so many opportunities this year. And it seems like you're doing the same thing. Like you're going to put yourself in positions at these events. You don't know who you're going to meet, but you're showing up, you're investing to be there, and you're making yourself talk to people. And that's how you make the connections.
Yeah, yeah. And for anyone watching right now who hasn't networked yet and are interested in it, just understand that like there's no magic formula, right? You just have to kind of just go there and just be authentic, tell your story. Because when I first started networking, I didn't know what I was doing either. I met a lot of people, but not a lot of people that I still talk to. There's only those few nuggets you get when you go to these things.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what you need to look for is those opportunities. The people that you think you could build long-term relationship with, that's the people you have to follow up with and you have to continue talking to, right? Because you can meet 300 people at an event, but that doesn't mean you're going to stay connected with 300 people. So you just got to find your person. You just got to find your people, and they're out there. You just gotta keep doing it.
Agreed. And I think the biggest thing to say here is the follow up, because that is something that I've been making myself do. I write down the people who I'm like, hey, I think I could actually vibe with them. And I just make myself follow up and just like check in, ask how you're doing, follow them on social media, like their stuff, just so they can see like I'm still there. And that's how you kind of
Hmm.
stay relevant with the person. Where at first I was like, how do I follow up? Do I just say hi, how are you? Do you want to meet up? Like I didn't know what to do at first, but I think it's as
Yeah.
simple as like social media makes it way easier.
Oh yeah. I mean, and it is sometimes following up isn't just you directly messaging them. Like what happened with me and Brandon after our event in Florida. I just started commenting on his post, and then I saw he was throwing events. So I was like, yeah, hey, would you mind if I come to this? And that's how it started. It's not always like, hey, how you doing? It's been 2 weeks. How's it going? It's not always like that. Sometimes you're just commenting on each other's posts.
Agreed. Okay, so your business is called the Warrior Lifestyle, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I would love to hear the overall mission behind the Warrior Lifestyle.
Yeah. So the warrior lifestyle, just to give you the exact answer, is helping others achieve the ultimate life. So whether you're someone who wants to be more fit, you want to be healthier, you want to be a better parent to your child, you want to be more driven, right? You want to be a leader. This group, this community, this business that I built is to help people do that. Because here's the thing, there's so many distractions going on in the world, right? That there's a lot of information that's being put out there that people don't know what to believe. People are misled. Some people are going down the wrong path. And I really feel that since I live this life, I kind of feel like it's my duty and my responsibility to be able to help others and pull others out of the hole that I was once in, and help them reach their true potential.
Okay, biggest question for you. So before I was a powerlifting coach, I was a personal trainer for, I believe, 6 years, like a while. And the thing
Okay.
that made me adjust from being a personal trainer to coaching powerlifters was I got sick of the everyday person having so many excuses. And like I felt like I was trying to figure out, I was trying to help them find their why. And me switching to boxing coach, I'll be honest with you, it made it much easier because RY is simple. There's a competition coming up. You have to be at this weight to even compete in it, and you have to be ready. And so I don't struggle. There is no let's talk about motivation and your why when it comes to my athletes. Like we just have a meet. But I know
Hmm.
you're working with a lot of everyday people. They may be high achieving in business and whatever, but when it comes to like the gym and training and their own health, how do you keep them going when they may not have a big event coming up?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. You use the example of competition, right? So you have a target, you have a goal to meet, you have a deadline, et cetera. So it's very easy to do it in that format. For me, it's simply here's the thing. Every day we're competing, whether it's for a trophy or not. We are competing as human beings every single day. I'm competing to be the best son on this planet. I'm competing to be better than I was yesterday. I'm competing to build this physique, this mindset, this incredible human being that's within this vessel to present to the world. Every day I'm competing. I'm competing to become the best version of myself, the better version that I was yesterday. So every day we're in competition.
That's a different way to think about it. That's a
Yeah.
that's a different way to think about it because I'm very much like, no, my competition is this girl. I'm looking at her post a 500 pound deadlift, and I gotta go against her.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me say this too. You might not understand what I mean when I say this, which is why I'm going to explain. But for someone like me at my level right now, I don't go to the gym to work out. Now, are you asking yourself, what do you mean? Probably,
I'm,
right? A
I'm
lot of
asking you, are you gonna say you go to train?
no, no, no. So
Okay.
check now. Of course, physically, I'm going there to train. Yes, of course. But like I said, I don't go to the gym to work out anymore. I go to the gym to build a better me. Like the examples I just gave, I go to the gym to be a better son. I go to the gym to perform at peak condition in my business. I go to the gym so I could be an example and a leader for the people that I'm leading, right? So it's like when you first start working out, it's all physical. It's all, yeah, let's build muscle, this and that. But I highly recommend and I highly encourage people to dive in a little bit deeper because the deeper you dive in, the more you're going to extract your why from that, right? And it's your why that's going to carry you throughout this journey, right? Because you're not going to get up at 3:30 in the morning like I do if all you want to do is just have a six pack. Like
Mm.
that's not going to do it. It might do it for a week or two, but it's not going to be consistent. There has to be something more powerful to wake you up in the morning. And for me, like I said, I want to be the best person, like the best physique, the best mindset, the best habits, the best everything that I can to present to the world because that's what I feel I owe the world. I feel that I owe the world that because if I have the ability to do it, it's my duty to get it done.
So when it comes to your clients, how do you help them find their why if they're not coming to you like, hey, I want to do this to be a better father? You might be like, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds and that's it. And
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of my clients, just like a lot of people in general, they don't always start that way. They don't always start from up here and yeah, I have all these goals. I'm ready. I'm pumped. I know my why. Sometimes we have to sometimes they have to start from the bottom up. A lot of my clients, they don't know what their why is. So we got to figure that out. They don't know what their vision is 10 years from now. Okay, we got to figure that out, right? So there's certain steps. Now, I'm not saying that you can't start working out in the meantime. You can, but we I kind of show them how to blend everything together. So one thing that I go over with them is I call it the 7 areas of life. There's 7 basic areas in our lives that we go through every single day. There's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, familial, which is family, and communal, which is community. Those are the 7 areas of life. That's why I like to say more like stick more towards the life coach versus the fitness coach. It's not all about fitness, right? So I teach my clients how to improve on their weak points, right? Because what happens is a lot of people they only focus on 1 or 2 areas, typically their favorite area, but the other ones suffer, right? So you could have someone crushing it at the gym, just going hard, ham, but they're not eating right. They're eating crap. Their nutrition isn't on point. You can have someone who's making 6 figures, 7 figures, not 8 figures, 9 figures in their business, but they're not showing up for their families.
Mm.
right? So are you really successful? Is this really like all you have? Is this all you have to give to the world? Like, I don't think it is. So for a lot of my clients, we have to start from the bottom and work our way up.
I really like your holistic view because I've never even heard like the 7 areas of life. Now I've heard all of these things separately, but I've never heard of
Hmm.
life being seen as in these 7 pieces. And
Yeah.
I think that's so good because you're right. People will come to you and they'll be like, "Hey, I'm heavily motivated to train. I think the program." And when you dig into it, it's like, do you have a deeper why? Because I'm seeing that maybe like you're not showing up at home. Like I can see that with like the conversations that we're having. So to be someone to be like, hey, like you need to focus on these other areas, not just the fitness, not just the nutrition, is huge. And then also to
Yeah.
build rapport with someone enough for them to open up to you must be a challenge too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of follow. You have to build a connection with your audience. The best way to do that is through social media, obviously, but you have to build a connection. You have to speak to them as if you're speaking to your younger self, right? So there has to be a level of they have to resonate with you. There has to be a level of trust before because they have to know you can help them, and you also have to be willing to help them as well, right? So you have to, this is why speaking your truth online is so important. Like I speak my truth every single day. I'm calling my shot every single day on social media, right? You see me every single day. I'm doing the same thing, just speaking my truth. And people will connect with you more through authenticity than you just trying to sell them a dream.
And that is so true because you really like that's how I really started to like you from afar before I got to talk to you more this past other weekend. I was like, I see this man post at like 3:30 in the morning every day. Like I be relentless.
Yeah.
But like it's so consistent. You're like, no, I'm really showing up every single day. I
Yeah.
remember I talked to Carl one time and
Yeah.
I texted him. I was like, I texted about you. I was like, Dan be getting up at 3:30 in the morning every single day. And he was like, why? It made me laugh because I was like, what is going on? Like, who is this guy who is like so like intense? But when I get to really know you, like you have such a deep why behind it, and you want the world, like you want to make the world a better place. And you're like, well, it starts with me. And it's hard to for a lot of people, I think, to imagine that they can make such an impact in the world. But when you are so disciplined and you change your own life, that's how you can impact others in a positive way.
Yeah, you actually just said something very important, changing your own life. You have to, people have to understand that you have to become this person first before you can ever help anyone else do it. Like I didn't wake up, I didn't quit construction and then just all of a sudden become a life coach, right? There was like a transition period where I had to become this person, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to get up early. I had to hit the gym. I had to build the consistency, the discipline. I had to become this person because like I said a few minutes ago, I can't help them unless I'm helping myself. I can't help them achieve their goals if I'm not achieving my own, right? So I have to be the example. I have to set the bar for everyone else to meet. And I hold that very near dear to my heart. Like that's why I always get up at, it's not easy getting up at 3:30. I mean, I make it look easy. I make it look really cool, but even to this day, it's a struggle. But I know that my reason to get up that early is more important than my reason to keep staying in bed.
That that's gonna be the line I use for your
Nice.
promo.
Let's
That
go.
sentence
Let's
right there.
Let's go. Let's go.
Okay, so like I've mentioned multiple times now, you're also a public speaker and you've been getting on some stages. And you kind of already explained like your why very deeply. When you get on stage and you know you only have 5 minutes, how do you kind of go about making sure that you leave an impact?
Yeah, the best way I do this, and I'm still playing around with it, but the best way that I do this is I try to put in as much emotion, as much authenticity in my message as much as possible. Like when I want the audience to leave like, man, this guy said this one thing that I never even thought about. I'm going to remember that because one day I might need it, right? So I always just try to add as much authenticity as possible, especially when I'm on stage in front of people, right? Because when you're on stage, when you're telling your story on stage is different than social media because you actually get to see people's emotions. You get to see their eye contact, right? It's more of an intimate setting. So like I have to be as authentic and just drive it home as much as possible.
So you have such a big presence when it comes to life. And something you shared with me over dinner was that you could have lost your life when you were a kid.
I could have, yeah, I could have. It was pretty bad.
I would really, if you're open to it, I'd love to kind of let the audience know, like, what happened to you when you were a kid, where you were literally in a hospital bed, like, I can barely breathe.
Sure, sure. So I was born with a condition. It's basically to explain it simpler. It's I was born with a concave chest. So what that means is the my breastbone, my sternum, was caving inward, right? Instead of it being straight like everyone else's, it was caving inward. Now I was playing video games one night. I was about 12 years old, and I just felt this pain in my heart for some reason. Like the closest thing I could compare it to is I was having a heart attack. And I was 12 years old. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I go up to my mom. I'm like, Mom, I think I'm having a heart attack. Like my chest is really bad. So, she thought I was just over exaggerating. So she gave me some Tylenol and, sent me off to bed. And it wasn't a big deal at that time because it didn't happen as frequently, right? It happened once every few weeks or so. But as time went on, it became more frequent. The pain intensified. And I was about 13 at that time. I'm like, Mom, you got to take me to the hospital because I don't feel good. I literally feel like I'm having a heart attack. She's like, okay, let's go. So doctors, they ran a few tests, they took x-rays, and they told me, they was like, yeah, I mean, you have a concave chest. Basically, what's happening is your sternum is pressing up against your heart because your heart is right behind that area, right behind your sternum. So it's pressing up on it. So that's why I felt like I was having a heart attack. That's where the pain came from. And the doctor said, okay, we have good news and we have not so good news. The good news is that this is fixable. You'll need surgery, but it's we can fix this. The not so good news is that it's going to be a long procedure. I actually had to get the same operation twice. So what
Oh.
happened was the first operation, what they did was they cut me on both of my sides, right by my rib cage, and they put a metal bar right behind my sternum. And what that bar did was that it pushed my sternum outward so it could kind of straighten it out. Okay. Now you have to imagine you're taking a bone that's curved and you're straightening it out. You're doing this in a matter of a few hours.
Whew.
So when I woke up at the recovery room, it felt like an elephant was standing on my chest. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move, I couldn't sit up, I couldn't do anything. I was just in agonizing pain. That lasted for a while. And then over time, obviously, I, moved around a little bit more and I was in physical therapy for about a month and a half to 2 months before I actually got to go home. So it was a long journey. So I had the rod in me for about 2 years. And then after the 2 years, same thing. They cut me open again, took the bar out. The recovery process the second time was a lot easier than the first time, but had to go through the same thing twice. And I'm good, no complaints. My heart is great, and I thank God that this was something that was fixable because God knows what could have happened if they didn't fix it, and what could have happened to my heart.
That that's so hard to hear because like just hearing like you're a kid and like you're waking up
Yeah.
and you're like, I can barely breathe. And like they told you like, yeah, so it's gonna be a couple months that you're here. You're like, so it's gonna last a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the biggest I had a few operations, but this is that was the biggest one I had, and it's a lot to handle for a kid that's 13, The first surgery I was 13, the second surgery I was 15, and it was a lot to deal with, but I got through it. I actually for school I had to get two sets of book. I had to get books that I could keep in class, and I had to take books that I had to keep at home, so because I couldn't really carry a lot of stuff, especially during the beginning process of it.
Now you were obviously super young, so the answer might be no, but do you feel like that changed your perspective of life at all after getting through that procedure?
It did a little bit. I kind of felt like at the time I was given a second chance. Now, obviously, that feeling kind of faded away and kind of life just kept going on, right? But when it initially happened, I'm like, oh man, I'm really glad they caught this thing. Like maybe this is like a second chance for me for something, right? I didn't figure out what that was till later in life, but yes, I did feel something like that.
Okay. Man, that's just hard to hear. I think the worst thing that happened to me as a kid was I dropped a glass, like giant glass vase, and had stitches in my leg, and like that was the worst thing that ever occurred to me. And I acted like the world
Yeah.
was ending. So
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't all bad. I think the best part of it was that I got to skip school for a little bit. So I was like I had my dad bring my PlayStation so I could connect it to the hospital room, and I'm just playing PlayStation, just not no care in the world. Every now and then my parents will go to school to pick up my homework. I would have to do my homework in the hospital or at my house wherever I was at. and then they would return it, to the school and et cetera. So it was painful, but at the same time, I kind of felt like I was on vacation from school. So not too bad of a gig.
So one thing that you mentioned is that you journal and you kind of picture your life a few years from now. And I mentioned that Brandon has me doing that too. Are you open to sharing what you want to get out of your business and life, some of the biggest things in the next 5 years?
Yeah, in the next 5 years, it's less. I mean, there's a little bit about me, but I'm in such a part of my life where I want to impact as many people as possible. Like I want to take as many people on this journey as possible. So if I look 5 years from now, I have an amazing sales team, amazing family, but at the same time, I'm traveling all over the world. I'm speaking all over stages. I'm just trying to help as many people as possible, trying to wake them up into what's going on in today's world. Everything's crazy right now. So I just want to be able to change as many lives as possible. Because I believe I can do that if I never stop, if I keep going, if I stay true to my mission. I do believe I'm going to reach a lot of people in 5 years, but it's just a matter of, I always say, how badly do you want it?
Mm.
How badly do you want to go down this journey? Which is why my routine is so important, which is why showing up is so important, which is why journaling and reflecting is so important, because I have to make sure that I have to make sure I am this person to be able to do this. And everything I'm doing now, my habits, my routines, everything, it shapes me to become the person that's going to be able to do that 5 years from now.
When you say sales team, do you want to be a coach of coaches?
No, so eventually I want to have like I'm a coach, for example, right? But in the future, I want to have other people in my team who can sell my program as well,
Okay.
and maybe eventually be coaches. Maybe that could be a potential. But I want to have other people because what I don't always want to sell. Like I said, sometimes I want to just go, I want to travel the world and speak to as many people as possible. But in order to do that, there's people that have to kind of run the company, and sell products and stuff like that. So that's what I think about when I want a badass sales team who's ripped, shredded, unshakable mindset, and who pretty much live the same lifestyle I do, right? Because if I have those people on my team, I know that they can deliver the value to my customers.
Amazing. What is or who is the number one speaker you currently look up to?
Ooh, the number one speaker I look up to. I don't know if I have a top one, but I would have to say right now is probably Ed Millett is a big one. I've been really into Ed Millett and Andy Elliott a lot lately. When I first started, it was Grant Cardone. I was a huge Grant Cardone fan when I first started my journey, and then I transitioned over to Bradley and Andy Elliott, and even my coach Sean Crane, who is where I want to be 10 years from now, right? He actually mentors with Andy and Brad as well. And I mean, the way he tells his story is like I try to just implement as much as I can from these guys. I try to just absorb as much as I can and just pretty much mimic exactly what they're doing.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I didn't even know. I just started learning about like other big name speakers, like I'm paying attention to them so I can like see like what they do if I want to kind of like what I can take from them. I think that's one thing I've been learning with Brandon. Like you want to review your own footage, look at other people, and see what you like about them.
Yeah, the whole review and footage thing is kind of new to me. I started doing that with Brandon as well. And I found out very recently in my last few speaking gigs that how important that is because me and him will break down the footage and like you might say something or do something that you might not know you're doing on stage, and then you go back and look at the footage and you're like, wait, that doesn't look right. Like, or I did this when I went to speak at Dylan's event in Missouri. There were about three things that stood out to me, but I didn't know that until I went back and looked at the footage. So it's like when you're training, when you're playing a game, when you're like in a basketball or football game, right? You have to study the opposite team for a few weeks, a few months, build up the strategy. Same thing with a UFC fighter, right? You have to study your opponent. Well, in this case, the opponent is the person you were yesterday. So what do you have to study? How can you become better? And yeah, that's a very important lesson I learned from Brandon directly, 100%.
What's the next stage you'll be on? Do you know yet?
Big stage, I don't know yet. Oh no, I'm sorry. So I'm gonna be speaking at Brandon's A to B Con 4 in April. All right, and I believe you're speaking there as well, so that's gonna be awesome. I do have one more, from my understanding, one more speaking engagement this year. I'm speaking at Guillory's event in December. He invited me. And check this out. This is, again, I always say the world is watching you. I always say that, right? Which is why I'm always posting on my stories. Okay. Guillory, after the Stanford, the UConn event, right? Guillory puts me off to the side. He's like, Dan, I want to schedule a call with you. I think we can work something together. So I'm like, sure, let's hop on a call. A couple of days later, we hopped on a call. He's like, Dan, I was thinking about you. I want you to speak at an event. I want you to be one of the speakers at my event. And the reason he said that is because pretty much the way I show up. He's
Mm.
like, dude, you're like, you freaking, you're relentless. You show up every single day. You're crushing it. Like, I need a guy like you on my stage. Like, can we do something together? I was like, absolutely. But that wouldn't have happened. Same thing with Dylan. Dylan invited me to Missouri because of the way I show up and the person I am. Wouldn't be getting these opportunities if I didn't speak my truth and if I didn't call my shot at the time. So important. The world is watching you, 100%.
The world is watching you. How can people work with you?
Yeah, so the best way, obviously, to reach me, the best way is on Instagram, Dan Flores Lifestyle. And then just shoot me a DM. Let me know if you're someone who wants to work with me. And again, it doesn't have to be fitness. We can work on your mindset, your habits, building stronger ties with your family, whatever the case is. Anything we talked about today, just shoot me a DM. I'll be more than happy to reach out to you.
Amazing. I'm going to make sure to put your Instagram information in the show notes as well. And I'll put a link to speaking events because there are a decent amount of people who are from the East Coast. So if they want to go to
Hmm.
them, I'll put them in the show notes. But thank you so much for joining. I really love learning about your mindset. And it's just so different to have someone speaking who was not just like, I compete in powerlifting, which I know my audience is so used to, but you're relentless in a different way. And you truly do see the world as like you want to really go hard in every area, not just in the gym and nutrition, but mentally, physically, spiritually, when it comes to family. Like you really are going hard in every area of your life. That's why I asked you to be on, because I see you and you're different. I'm watching you too. The world's watching.
I appreciate that, Solana. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, y'all, and catch you next time on the Power and Lifting Podcast.